discussing today's topics from an African American perspective. This is Another View.
Happy Friday, everyone, and happy holidays, too. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Welcome to Another View. A very special thank you to everyone who has already pledged your support of this show and of all the programming you hear on WHRO, WHRV FM. If you haven't made your pledge yet, there is still time. Call 889-9476 and tell the volunteer you're calling in support of Another View. And we do have a $2,000 match this hour, which means if we reach $2,000 by 1 o'clock today, then we will get an additional $2,000. So give us a call, 889-9476, and make your pledge of support. So there's lots and lots to talk about on today's show with the Another View Roundtable. So let's just get to it. Wil LaVeist is a radio talk show host, journalist, and author. Hey, Will.
Always a pleasure, Bob.
And a member of WHRV FM.
Yes, I am.
Thank you very, very much. We appreciate that. Bill Thomas is our community activist and also a member of WHRV FM. Hi, Bill.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to
How
you,
are
too.
you?
I'm doing great.
Lovely time of the season. Perfect weather, perfect ambiance, perfect everything.
And our guest pundit today is no stranger to Another View. Eric Claville is assistant professor and director of the Hampton University Pre-Law Institute. How you doing, Eric?
Very good, Barbara.
Welcome to the family.
Thank you very much.
Eric just made his pledge of support, so we really appreciate that. Now, Roger Chesley is in Richmond today. He is celebrating his youngest child's graduation from college. Yay, Roger. Congratulations to him and Michelle and everything. And Carol Pretlow is in the middle of final exams at Norfolk State University. So that's where our other two pundits are today. I want you all to listen to something real quick, and then we'll start the conversation.
I take responsibility.
Hang on.
On the track.
Southside Chicago, we all know we had to do overtime every night to make it tomorrow. And everyone could really make their dream true. Hey kid, listening in Michigan, that could be you.
But a dream is just a dream unless you go hard. Einstein put it in time, here's a flow chart. Naturally it won't happen magically, but you can change fantasy into reality so dramatically. If you wanna fight crime, you should go to college. If you wanna write rounds, fill your head with knowledge. If you wanna stare at grass, don't go to college. But for everything else, you should go to college.
That was our First Lady, Michelle Obama, rapping about going to college to get the knowledge. Meanwhile, during oral arguments before the Supreme Court this week in the affirmative action case Fisher versus University of Texas, Justice Antonin Scalia suggests that black students belong in, quote, slower colleges than their white peers, and perhaps University of Texas does not need as many black students in their ranks. Slower colleges, Bill?
Well, actually, I know the Supreme Court justice, and I've had dinner with him, and found him to be a very honorable person, well-thinking. I haven't read all of it. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I think there's a little bit of truth and a lot of wrong with that, but everybody's entitled to their opinion. But I guess the thing that I'm most concerned about, I don't think that a public official in his position should be taking public statements like that with a whole bunch of documentation and a whole lot of explaining as to why he came to that particular conclusion.
He said specifically, this is a quote from him, "There are those who contend that it does not benefit African Americans to get them into the University of Texas, where they will not do well, as opposed to having them go to a less advanced school, a slower track school, where they will do well. One of the briefs pointed out that most of the black scientists in this country don't come from schools like the University of Texas. They come from lesser schools where they do not feel they're being pushed ahead in classes that are too fast for them." Will?
I think the Supreme Court Justice has made a very careless, foolish statement. What he's talking about is something that's referred to as the mismatch theory. It's some theory that if you provide all these allowances to get to certain schools based on race and so forth, that it actually does harm to the students to go to it. So he's quoting from a brief about the case, making a careless comment about it. He's not really getting detailed into what he's talking about. And this mismatch theory is not even central to this particular case. So it's a theory that is got tons of criticism of it. Can't even be confirmed by other researchers. It's not really central. When you really look at this case and what it's about, it's a shot in the dark, a dart thrown out there by the lawyers trying to argue this case that is suspect to begin with. Mm-hmm. And here he is, the highest court in the land, making a careless statement about it. It's really ridiculous. He should really be ashamed of himself for making these kinds of comments in this context with such an important case.
Eric, this case is actually based on a white student saying that she did not gain entrance because of affirmative action.
Sure. And actually, this case is Fisher 2, and I think it's very important to point out how this case got to the Supreme Court. There are groups who are against certain type of social policies, and they seek out candidates in order to have what you call named plaintiffs in order to bring these cases. Fisher actually graduated years ago, and not even really in the picture anymore. But what ended up happening is that I actually invited Urban Chemerinsky, who's going to be a guest on the Claville Report on your show, in April. And we're going to discuss the Fisher case after the official ruling comes down. We've done the votes, the legal scholars have, and he actually spoke to our students October 23rd when we have our pinning ceremony. For our pre-law students, we're inducted over 100 students into our institute to prepare for law school. And we know by those votes that 6-3, that's what we're looking at, that affirmative action as it relates to undergraduate admissions for higher education will be ruled unconstitutional. The same way that Grutter versus Bollinger made it unconstitutional for higher education to use race as a factor. And keep in mind, this as a factor, in admissions into professional schools, which was law schools at the time. So, and you think about it, when I teach from the perspective of the pendulum of justice swinging to the extremes, Brown versus Board of Education 2 made it unconstitutional to have segregation in schools, K through 12. Before that, there was the Texas case. Again, Texas, which made it unconstitutional for law schools to have segregated classrooms. So that's in 1954. We're less than 50 years after that. Well, actually more than 50 years, but less than 61 years after that. And now you see the pendulum swinging back again. And what you're going to have in these institutions are segregated schools. But keep in mind, Barbara, very quickly, that we're not talking about regional colleges or universities. Old Dominion is fine,
Well, I was going to say, who are these lesser schools?
No.
Who are they?
Sure. Well, when you look at education, higher education, you're talking what we call top tier, and they're top tier for dollars purposes. Research-intensive institutions, University of Michigan, University of Texas, University of Virginia, University of Maryland. And it's usually those major state institutions within the various states. So you're talking about 50 plus of those institutions, They have over $1 billion endowments. They get billions of dollars every year in research.
So a lesser school makes lesser money.
Exactly.
Because the connotation, Bill, that it sounded like he was saying was that lesser school meaning lesser education or easier education.
Well, no, that's exactly what Scalia meant, listen, Scalia, Thomas, and the other justice slips my mind right about now, but he came out of Jersey, the circuit court there. But those individuals are there on the court to turn back the clock on all social programs and things that were created in the civil rights era in order to keep the status quo, and, listen, the decisions show it. The way they're written and what they say actually can be interpreted that way.
So doesn't it sound like, though, that he's already made up his mind?
Oh, yeah. Look, it's going to be 6-3, You heard it here. That's the count.
Bill, go ahead.
What difference does it make? I'm tired of all these arguments about people turning back the clock and this and that and the other. Our public schools are more segregated than they were in 1954. It's about not charter schools, about zip codes. Until people truly understand that they're not lesser, they are equal and we're better or just as good as anyone in our minds. We've broken the chains of slavery around our ankles and arms, but in our minds we haven't. I've never, ever seen life like this. I mean, I could care less what the Supreme Court says. I could care less what he says. I know that I can go to Norfolk State or Hampton University or Texas Southern or Southern University or Texas, and get a very good education. And I also know, as a survey we talked about the last show, that black kids who go to these PWI schools are not as treated as well. They don't feel treated as well. You have all these issues at the University of Missouri and now Maryland. And these people are just psyching themselves out. When you look at who produces the most PhDs, most women PhDs, you'll look at a Howard and a Hampton. You look at who produces 30% of the doctors and the psychiatrists, and these people, they're historically black colleges and universities. And it's primarily because the books are all the same, the languages are all the same, the teachers are all pretty much equal. Now, the dollars aren't. But the thing that if you look at going to an HBCU versus trying to get into one of these PWIs, like you're going to have to
predominantly white institutions.
Yes, like you have to be there to learn. You have to be with people. As the segregation laws tried to force us to think that we weren't equal, that we had to be with white people to prosper. As long as we keep that mentality and talk this garbage about people turning the clock back and all that stuff, it's just gobbledygook. Go to a school, do what you got to do. Get there, and you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Barbara, here's why it matters. Because not everyone thinks as Bill thinks.
Oh.
Right? And a lot of what he just said is true. You have to believe in yourself, believe in these institutions. The reality is, I went to the Lincoln University of Pennsylvania.
Good for you.
The first degree granting black college in the nation, right? Mm-hmm. If employers perceive Lincoln as being a lesser school, what is going to happen is that those students who come out, that Lincoln education, quality education, that educated Langston Hughes, for example, right? Yeah. That educated Thurgood Marshall. Mm-hmm. These are Lincoln grads. Mm-hmm. If they perceive it as being a lesser school, that student who is now in an interview, trying to get a job, trying to take care of their family, trying to address their debt and all of these other things, will have a more difficult time getting a job because the Supreme Court justice has affirmed that and has said that. So what Bill says is true. You have to believe in your education and believe in yourself, and we're all using the same books. He's right. I've taught at Northwestern University. I've taught at Hampton University. I've taught at ODU.
Were the books different?
I've taught at all of these. Yeah, right.
They were all the same.
The point is perception is reality, and we fight to get into Michigan, to get into Harvard, to get into Yale, because when you come out of these institutions, the perception is different.
Eric?
I want to address, what Bill was saying regarding googly glock or whatever terminology you use, and also what.
How about nonsense? You understand that word?
I understand it very well, Bill.
Okay, very good.
Okay, and
stay on topic.
Go ahead, Eric.
Okay. It's basically, he sits here all the time, talks about fairness in contracting. Okay. We need our fair share and so forth and so on. What these cases are about are basically keeping status quo as is. Okay. We talked about this in our show, White Privilege. Okay. When you look at institution of higher education, these are the gateways to the access of opportunities, meaningful opportunities for access, okay? And when you block individuals from receiving those meaningful opportunities to access, all right, to access the opportunities that America has for you to help raise yourself up, okay, and
scoot back over so we can see you on the air.
Sure, and and do various things. What you're doing, you're keeping that line of demarcation between those that have and those that don't have. In America, is those that have, okay, white society for the most part because of laws and public policy that created that. And those that don't have, African Americans, people of color, and the like. You're going to see a lot of these cases and a lot of these decisions this way as the population shifts to becoming more black and brown. And because of the fear mongering that individuals are putting into into society, saying that we need to take our country back, or they're taking our country,
we do.
And things of that nature. And also, as it relates to believing in yourself, I agree with that, okay? I tell students all the time, you go to a university or school that is right for you, and it's about opportunity, those that want you there, those that are going to help you, and where you believe that you can achieve the goals that you've set for yourself. Your degree gets you in the door for that first opportunity. It's what you do after that opens up the doors from there.
Okay, before you go ahead, Bill.
Just one really quick point.
Okay.
we're back into the W.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington argument.
Talented 10th?
No. Whether we have to work and own our own business, do our own things, or try to integrate with people who don't want to be integrated with. So I think we're still at that argument. I've had the fortune of having sisters and brothers go to Harvard, MIT, Georgia Tech, and Southern, and Texas Southern, and Hampton University. When you walk in that employer's door and you black, it didn't matter if you went to Harvard or or Hampton. It really didn't. It doesn't. Ask my sisters. Going to and graduating and getting a medical degree from Harvard and things like that almost drove her crazy, because then she was never, ever allowed to reach her full potential in that white infrastructure. The problem is we don't own our own business. We don't collaborate and cooperate and purchase and do things among each other. We don't encourage ourselves to be better and think higher and have these higher expectations. And I had a group of children that I was talking to, or students actually, asking me, well, Mr. Thomas, you almost feel that you're superior than white folks. In my mind, I am. Civilization was started in Africa. The linkage of where we are today started with people that looked like me. And I was taught that and preached that. So I never, ever saw the laws are going to be there to keep the rich in power as long as they possibly can. And they're going to continue to be that way.
His rhetoric is so contradictory.
Then let me go to my last conversation.
I hope his white conservative fans heard him say he believes he is superior to them.
Absolutely.
I want some of you all to call in, please.
I was taught.
Call in and support Bill Thomas.
I'm not arrogant to say that I act like that. But I don't see myself as lesser than other people. I see us better or the same, not less than more.
You're not going to get it. Your fans are not going to call in on this show.
I don't have any fans. They'll call in.
White conservative fans.
But that's
he did just say something true.
Hold on.
He has no fans.
Well, actually, I do. Actually, I truly do.
Beyond his family.
All right, let me ask a question, though. Because
I don't have liberal fans. I don't have people who don't think of themselves as better than or best or things like that. I talk what I talk. I do what I do. I don't consider myself to be better than some black people like some of us do, but we can go from there.
Okay. People say that we were talking about perceptions in this discussion.
Yes.
So Norfolk State University yesterday or day before yesterday found out December the 8th that their accreditation has been, or the sanctions against them have been lifted.
Good for them.
They are completely accredited. Is that going to change the perception of Norfolk State? Because they had an issue when the accreditation first started, or the accreditation issues first started.
It definitely will help. I mean, Norfolk State is a quality institution. Students, many of the students, quality students. Educators, quality people. Carol Pretlow is right here with us. Quality people.
Our producer and our audio engineer.
That's right. Quality journalism department. Look, the bottom line is, why do we have these accreditation institutions in the first place? If you are a student that's looking to go to college, you're going to look at these kinds of issues, and if the school is not accredited, you're going to feel like, well, I'm not going to go. If you're an employer and you're saying people are coming out of an institution that's not accredited, well, they're probably not quality employees.
One of the other issues, because one of our interns brought this up too, she was saying that some of the students transferred not realizing that the accreditation issues were financial, not academic. So, Eric, you want to comment on that?
Sure. I mean, and that's really on the institution to communicate that. But at the same time, we're talking about perception. You have these various standards, and a lot of institutions, not just Norfolk State or the HBCUs, but a lot of institutions do suffer from various things such as mismanagement. They do suffer from many things such as a vacuum of leadership. They do suffer from not really capturing their base and really going after their students that they feel that they can educate in that particular area. So, again, I think it was up on the institution to really communicate that to their stakeholders. And also, I'm a very big advocate that alumni and stakeholders of institutions really need to step up. And if there are leaders in office that should not be there, they should be the ones to ask for their removal. They should also be the ones to be giving as much as they can give because, again, that institution speaks for them and not just their students there. Because the greatest compliment an institution can have is that your alumni send their children back to the institution.
And that is one of the struggles that HBCUs, Bill, are facing because there's so many other opportunities.
Yes,
they say.
And again, my daughter, she went to Hampton, and she had other choices, but she sat down and we said that was it. I just think our perception versus realities when we listen to somebody like a Celia and we believe it. See, that's what I'm trying to say. I don't believe what he's saying. Mm-hmm. I just don't believe it, and I don't believe he has the references, Mr. Webb, to prove it. So I just discount it.
Okay, let's see.
You do.
Aday joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Barbara, and all the panel. I always enjoy the conversation. I just want to be brief. I just want to remind folks that, and I think the brother Bill just mentioned it, that integration has left us with a facade of equality. Yeah. And we were better off being segregated because then we had a focus on developing ourselves individually or holistically as a black community. We were focused on identity. We were focused on our identity as black people, our abilities to do more and great things. I mean, even when we were in enslavement, we were creating and creating devices and all this other stuff that we never got credit for. And not until we were able to get out and we were segregated had we been able to really advance forward. And now that we're integrated, it's taking us back because it's making us feel as if we're equal. But the true perception of white America is that we are not equal. Amen. And that is we're always left to the behest of their decisions. And we're talking about Scalia and his decision. But I agree with Bill. If we take control over ownership of businesses, entrepreneurship, go to whatever school you want to go to. I graduated from ODU with an electrical engineering degree. I'm not going to use that knowledge to go and build a white man's company. I'm sorry. I'm going to use that knowledge. I'm going to learn to be a white man, but I'm going to use that knowledge to build something for myself, and I have. But not for the last 16 years.
Okay, Aday, I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to give the roundtable a chance to react to what you're saying. Go ahead, Will. I
respect his position, respect his passion. I challenge him to show me any country where people who have been segregated have been successful. Any country on this planet. Where do you have a system where segregation exists and the group that is segregated out, because that's what segregation means. You are going to operate over there with limits. We are going to operate over here at a higher level and enjoy all the spoils. Show me a society where that community has been successful. The biggest proponents of segregation in this nation on the black side, you look at Malcolm X, one of my heroes. He evolved and recognized that, look, we are living in a global society. When this brother puts together that business, and I'm absolutely in support of what he's talking about, developing your own businesses, who is he going to sell to? Or is he only going to sell to a certain group of people? Who you operating in a global society?
He didn't say that. Malcolm X also said that we couldn't get outside our community until we got our own selves together and we understood each other and what we had to do. And that's what that brother was talking about.
No, but he said segregation.
No.
We're not in disagreement on that. I said, understand what segregation is.
I've been blessed to have lived a good life. And I lived in a Jewish community when I was growing up. And that was the most segregated community that I've ever seen in my entire life. But they also understood that they live in a global environment and that a few Jewish communities could not control within all of the world or the globe or their own community. But they mastered things. They taught us to pride. Education is the mother's milk.
Define what do you mean by segregation? You got to define what you mean by segregation, because I grew up in New York among the Hasidic community. They living in an area where, that's the Hasidic area. That's not what segregation is. They're operating within the broader economy and everything.
But that's what I'm saying.
Is that what you mean? Because that's not what we had.
Exactly.
That's not what we had. We had white only, black only. You will not go past this demarcation.
I didn't want to go past it.
Okay, there we go. Guess what? We got to take a quick break. We have to go over to Pledge Central and find out how we're doing. Sandra, are you there?
I am. I'm here.
You know, I hate
this
to
is why we're
this conversation.
I know,
Absolutely.
but this is why people are listening to Another View. This is why people come here every Friday to listen to Another View, and especially the roundtable discussion, because never disappointed in the content, what you hear, never disappointed in you will always get a thoughtful conversation. And okay, I'm going to answer your question, Barbara. I almost didn't want to stop either. I want the conversation to keep going. But I will tell you this. We have a $2,000 challenge, as you said, and we've raised $1,116 of that.
Oh, come on. That's fantastic. We got about 30 minutes left. Absolutely. Right. We can do this, listeners of Another View.
So if you are listening right now, obviously you are listening right now. You're hearing my voice, and you want to hear what's next in that conversation, then call right now while Dan, Cauley, and I are talking and make that pledge of support for Another View. 889-9476. 889-9476. Dan, please.
There's the reason to call. Keep the conversation going, because this Friday and every Friday, thank you for that ping. That means someone has contributed to keep the conversation going. Because when you think about it, these are conversations that need to be had. We shouldn't be afraid to have these conversations, and there needs to be forums for it, and there aren't that many places for the conversation like this to even happen. So, you know, as a volunteer and a contributor, Barbara, thank you WHRV for you know, putting a forum out there and giving a place for people to express themselves. Kathy Lewis does it. Barbara does it. WHRV does it. So I'm encouraging you right now to call, because that's the only way to keep the conversation going. 889-9476, 1-800-940-7170. You know, we're having a lot of fun with our pets, and we're having a lot of fun with Pet Pledge Friday. Catherine Meme called in honor of her two little dogs, Otis and Odie, and she's a renewing member. Thank you for you know, staying with us. And that's fun. That's wonderful. We've had lots of people call in and have some fun, but let's not forget what it's really about. It's about keeping the conversation going.
Yes. Patricia Van Olen of Newport News called in honor of her granddogs Tilly and Macho, a renewing member there. Thank you very much. A brand new member, welcome to the family, Jacqueline Woods Lawal. She is from Virginia Beach, and she donated in honor of her family, her friends, and Willie. So thank you. Welcome to the family, Jacqueline. Now you are a member, not just a listener. And it's a little bit different kind of listening, I think you'll find, Jacqueline. And I bet a year from now, when it's time to renew your membership, I will be thanking you for renewing it, because I think you will be pleased in how this sounds now, as with the ear of someone who has contributed to what it is that you're listening to. I don't know if that made any sense whatsoever.
It does, because you do not listen passively to shows like this. I guarantee that there's folks talking to their radio just 5 minutes ago. They were talking back, and those are the folks we want to.
No, they were talking at the radio. They were going, wait! Don't stop the conversation. What happened?
And if that was you, and I know it was, you need to call right now, 889-9476, and be a member, be a part of it. Keep the conversation going. We've got about 2 more minutes, and we thank you for that ping. We need at least 5 more people to step up to keep the conversation going. 889-9476. Get on the phone right now. Be a part of this show.
We've got a dollar for dollar match happening right now, too. So if it is time to renew, or maybe you would like to join Jacqueline and become a new member, see what it feels like to be a member, to be a contributor to programs like Another View, call now and your money counts double. 889-9476. Dollar for dollar match going on while this show is on. 757-889-9476. We are in the final hours of our winter membership drive. It's the end of the year drive. So if you need another incentive, don't forget your tax deduction there at the end of the year. That certainly counts.
That always helps. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, it does indeed. 889-9476. 757-889-9476. Ed and Jane Chambers, renewing member. They called in memory of their late greyhound, Lola. Thank you very much for renewing your membership.
And thank you for that call there. I hear the phone ringing.
We do here at WHRV. If you're listening right now, if you were really getting into that conversation and it abruptly stopped so you could listen to me and Dan chatter away here, well, call and make a pledge of support.
We're just paying the bills. That's all we're doing. We're paying the bills so that Barbara can keep it going. Thank you for that call. There's another person stepping up. Come on. We want 3 more people in the next minute. 3 more. There's another one. We need 2 more people in the next minute, and then we're going to go back to the conversation.
And I'll throw this out here. If you already are a member, thank you. If you made that pledge of support, thank you. But maybe you know someone who listens and you talk about Another View every week, but they're not members. Why not give the gift of public radio? We've got a great little voucher here. We'll make sure you get it in time for the holidays to give us a gift, and then you can have your friend or loved one, someone else who loves public radio but is not a member, you'll be giving them the gift of programs like Another View. You'll be giving them the gift of Barbara.
One more caller. Come on, one more caller. That's what we need. One more.
889-9476. Dollar for dollar match happening right now. 889-9476 and WHRV.org. Point, click, and pledge your support. Let's take you back to the conversation, Barbara.
Thank you so much, Sandra and Dan. If you're just joining us, we're talking with the Another View Roundtable, journalist Wil LaVeist, community activist Bill Thomas, and Eric Claville with Hampton University. We stopped that conversation. We're going to move to another topic because you guys, I'm loving it. Okay. There was a video released by the Chicago Police Department showing 16 bullets emptied into the body of Laquan McDonald, an African-American male carrying a pocket knife and walking away from police. As a result, the police superintendent has been fired. There are calls for Mayor Rahm Emanuel to step down, and the U.S. Justice Department has opened an investigation into civil rights practices within the police department. Let's listen to the mayor.
I take responsibility for what happened because it happened on my watch. And if we're going to fix it, I want you to understand it's my responsibility with you. But if we're also going to begin the healing process, the first step in that journey is my step, and I'm sorry. One young man asked me a simple question that gets to the core of what we're talking about. He said, "Do you think the police would ever treat you the way they treat me?" And the answer is no. And that is wrong. And that has to change in this city. That has to come to an end now. No citizen is a second-class citizen in the city of Chicago.
Eric, we heard the emotion in the mayor's voice. No citizen is a second-class citizen. But we keep finding out over and over these instances where African-American males have been treated differently.
Sure. First of all, if you haven't seen the video, please see it. It's very graphic, very disturbing. You'll see 16 bullets unloaded into the guy. Even when he falls on the ground, I think they put additional
they kept shooting.
Of the 16, I think it's maybe about 12.
Yeah, he needed some more.
Yeah.
Right, so you see his body jerking back and forth. The police are, unloading their guns on him. But keep in mind that there's nothing new under the sun. Again, another theory from which I teach, what is, was, and what was shall be. These are the same practices that African Americans have endured from police authority and individuals of authority since arriving here in this country in slavery and servitude. The only reason why this is surfacing is because of these video cameras. Okay, keep in mind, Rodney King was getting beat, and we only saw that because a guy was testing out a VHS. a handheld camcorder that his girlfriend bought him, and he just happened to see this. This is happening all the time. If you go back and let's look at cases. Okay, look at the Rampart scandal, Los Angeles Police Department in 1990s. You had a bunch of rogue cops shaking down gang members, killing, framing people. You had over 70 people indicted, serving long federal prison time because of this. Look at what happened in New York with the stop and frisk case, okay? And then when you have good officers that expose this type of behavior by their fellow officers, like Adrian Schoolcraft in New York, they threw him in a psych ward and went to his apartment in SWAT gear and was going to kill him, okay? So these are things that are happening. Now, on the flip side of that, as Rahm Emanuel stated, would he be treated the same way? The answer is absolutely not. What can African Americans do to avoid this type of behavior by police? Okay, I mean that's a discussion for itself because we have the UVA incident. Young man, honor student, doing everything he's supposed to do, and by a alcohol controlled beverage. I mean, he's on the ground even after having a cordial, jovial conversation with the bar owner. And his head is burst open, okay? He's like, I've done everything right, but I'm still viewed as a threat. And when someone needs the opportunity to exercise their authority, they're going to find a young black male and exploit them.
Or they're going to find young black females like the officer who was just
in Oklahoma
who was just found guilty and is supposed to serve 200 years, I think. It was some really large number. But he was targeting women, African-American women, who pretty much society would have thrown away, quote unquote, Will.
Yeah, because, again, that question that was asked, of Mayor Manuel is the bottom line. We have these tiers upon which we look at people, and African-American women being at the bottom of the totem pole. So that's what the fundamental problem is, that we have a society in which people are treated differently. And then you have your government and people who are representative of your government, your police, executing this. He's talking about L.A. We know that back in the 30s, early in the 30s, that Los Angeles Police Department specifically recruited whites from the Deep South into the police. This is not made up stuff. You can find this. It's in your history.
William H. Parker.
And that creates a culture that over generation, it gets executed. And then when we see people acting out, when we see the predictable behaviors of being under this kind of condition, what do we start doing? You start looking at the victim. Well, he needs or she needs to do something different so that they don't get their head busted in.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that, to that point, Bill, because you bring that up a lot when you say if people just get their act together. But even Eric just mentioned the case with UVA. Even people who are doing the right thing still find themselves victim to police brutality.
I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I've been saying the same thing for 20 years. You have to try to figure out where your leadership is. In Chicago, the leadership is what it is, and still things happen. I think there's a mentality among us that we're still suffering under this bondage of slavery, and we just don't stand up and get beyond it. And what I mean is that I don't want Mr. Michael Vick when he dealt with the dogs, there was an outrage. There was a pure outrage that stopped everything and fixed the problem. When a young man in Chicago is shot down, it's unbelievable. There's no. Where's the leadership in that? Where is the leadership? Let me finish. And then but what I think one of the major problems is, and then of course we're going to laugh at it. I think it's very serious when a young man that could have been my son, done that too, or have been done that too, and he went to the school. It could have
been any of the three.
Any of us. But the last point is, we got to clean our own act up so that they don't have any excuses. We can have young men over in these neighborhoods, and a young Hampton student, Joseph Bose, who was just shot right down the street here, and 75 people saw him get shot, and then nobody will say what happened. You can't have the young man that was out in front of the barbecue store in Portsmouth, where they said 100 people were there, and his mom, his wife or girlfriend or somebody's on TV begging someone to come in and say, well, who did this? I just think we have to look in ourselves to fix our own communities. And I just think it's an excuse to have the kind of leadership, which is black leadership in Chicago. And at all the city council levels, at all the other levels, and for this to happen and for them not to hold these folks accountable as they would someone else, it just speaks volumes for why we're still here.
Okay, you guys are going crazy. I'm going to let Eric speak first, and then you will. Go ahead, Eric.
Sure. One thing that Bill just engaged in, which is what a lot of spin doctors do, he engaged in what we call a red herring. Okay, I teach critical thinking and logic. Teach people how to think and to listen for deception. So basically what he's doing is using an ad hominem, which he's misplacing the burden of proof. Okay, this concept is basically taking one problem and misplacing the burden of proof in order to fix that problem with another example. So Bill says, we need to get our act together in our black communities. Therefore, the police won't shoot.
No, I didn't say that.
Individuals.
No,
okay.
No.
Therefore,
wait, let him finish, and then I'll let you finish.
He can't keep going
therefore,
on
Therefore, African Americans will not endure this type of behavior by police, which we've just mentioned. Over 700,000 reported stop and frisk in New York where individuals didn't have anything. They just looked a certain way, okay? Now, when you start to take a look at these various issues, again, there's nothing under the sun. Look at Black Wall Street in Tulsa. Those people were doing the right thing. They were pulling themselves up economically, but they still end up being subjected to the authority of whites and the police, and their whole community was destroyed.
Bill? I'll let you respond, and then we'll...
and that's fine. And, it's a false premise. Because what happens is, if you look at FBI statistics, over 325,000 African-Americans have been killed by ourselves in our own communities. I'm not saying what the white police or black police are doing with the authority that they've been given by government to gun down that child like that is just absolutely wrong. But it's not a false anything to say that we ought to look inside our own selves to figure out how we can fix our own problems, build our own businesses, create our own schools, and take care of ourselves so that at least we will start generating the power and the economic awareness so that we can have some protection. Right now, we have no protections. We don't own the businesses. We don't control the schools. We don't control the political process. We don't control anything else. And until we look at that and fix that, nothing is going to happen. And then lastly, about Norfolk State, I'm glad they have been given their accreditation. I think that's just a test to keep people in their place anyhow. The problem is so few African Americans are graduating from our inner city public schools to fill the pipelines to fill up not only Norfolk State, but any HBCU because there's so few of the students. It's not anything. It's just a reality. The reality is if my kid walks down the street in Chesapeake or in Virginia Beach from Harvard or wherever else, they'll beat him down and shoot him down even maybe, or in Chicago, the same way that kid got shot down. The problem is, do we have any power to do anything about it, in my judgment?
Well,
so what you just saw was Bill just reinforced what Eric was trying to explain. So now, instead of us being focused on your government was hired, paid by your tax dollars to protect and serve, is instead shooting people down, citizens down, covering it up. There was a police officer that came on the scene and was never questioned, and he just came up the other day. The Chicago Tribune inquired about this officer that came on the scene within 1 minute, and he was never questioned. And this is an incident that happened a year ago.
And that's
so this question that we're talking about, this issue we're talking about right now, we're not talking about abortion. We're not talking about immigration right now. We're talking about this issue of your government, police officers abusing its citizens that has been hired and paid for by the citizens' tax dollars to protect and serve, and what we're going to do about this. So if we don't stay focused on that, we will never do anything about it.
Okay, well, then let's answer Bill's point, though, in that context of talking about our government and our tax dollars. What do we need to do to fix it? How do we change the mindset of people so that they will stop automatically looking at you, Will, and making an assumption right off the bat that you are trouble or you don't deserve to live or whatever that assumption is? Exactly
what Mayor Emanuel is starting to talk about. I just finished a couple of weeks ago monitoring a panel by 200-plus men, in which we had people from the community, police officers. We had the police chief from Hampton, police chief from Newport News. We had representatives from the FBI. We had a fantastic discussion about how both sides are seeing this issue and trying to work together. And a lot of what has to happen is community policing, the community, the police officers being a part of the community. I was just the other day was talking to a retired Newport News police officer on another issue. We were talking, and he was talking about the importance of being out in the street, in the community, and engaging people on levels other than on crime. Being able to talk, and he was talking about, for example, about what people in the community do, and they say a mother would hit their child. If you don't act right, you see that police officer there, he's going to put you in jail. He was saying that when you do that, you are already putting up a wall that I'm someone to be feared rather than someone here to be protected. So what Emanuel is doing is being a leader and bringing people together and getting to the core issue. Why are people being treated differently? That's how you're going to get to it.
Eric.
Sure. And this is full circle because it goes back to the first issue in which we discussed, and that's access to meaningful opportunities. What we talk about in policy, politics, and law, we need meaningful policy that's passed in order to change the limited access to opportunity so individuals can then start to participate in what we call the American dream, okay? And thereby you have a stake, and then you build economic wealth and access, which then pulls and pushes the social policy, which then causes you to have a voice, which then when there are these meetings that are held, okay, which some of us have been in, I've been in quite a few where they say, okay, hands off this particular area and so forth, this contract goes to that person and so forth, then when you look at that, now you start to dictate the public policy. You start to dictate the reaction, and you start to dictate the interaction between individuals. The other part of that is what Will stated, and what I call the art of diplomacy, where you have collective and individual accountability, collective and individual respect, collective and individual responsibility, and collective and individual transparency as it relates to individuals that are in government, your local authority figures, and what we call the community. So being able to call and say, hey, police officer, how are you today, and so forth, and engage in a conversation makes all the difference.
Barbara, they had community policing right here in Lambert's Point, Kensington, and Park Place when Melvin Hyde was in charge of the Norfolk Police. The community police office right there at 35th and Colley. It was doing wonderful jobs. It was reducing crime. It was doing all these things these nice gentlemen are talking about. You know what they did? They closed it. They closed it. They closed it. And Mr. Carlos Howard, who helped get that started with a bunch of citizens and working with David Rice and the Norfolk Regional Housing Authority and others, it was very effective. It was closed. Here's the problem. First of all, I think we need to go back and find out why they closed that, because it was working. Go back and go look into that.
Well, the question is, then, if it was working so well, why didn't the community stand up and demand that it continue?
I would like to follow up with that because it's too long a story to get into right now, but we had that. Hampton University, with the cooperation of Secretary Brian Moran, had every law enforcement officer in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia on our campus about in end of August, talking about the same things. The issue becomes the local leadership. The issue becomes that everybody, there's no difference between who's right and who's wrong, or who's white and who's black. We're all doing quite well. It's the people, the 99 or 98% people that are left behind, who lives in Kensington Court right behind us over here, who don't talk to. I think ODU's doing a fine job. I think the president is doing a whole bunch of good things to make the economic conditions and everything prosper for everyone. But there's a certain segment of these communities in Lambert's Point and in Kensington and in Park Place, which is a perfect laboratory, that is not working. The kids aren't graduating from school. They aren't doing those kinds of things because we left. And, all these people talk, all this baloney. I literally saw 57 black men get shot in these areas 20 years ago. It's hurt me so bad. At the same time as Rodney King, I literally moved right down the street and lived among the people who were having the issues. And I think they're 10 years. And two things that we did. This is what we did. We reduced low baby births and deaths 99%. We hired people and got them educated. We tore down every drug house. We set up educational standards. We created cooperative agreements between Norfolk Academy and the community so kids could see those opportunity dreams and they could also participate in it. We started up a deal with Centera where if you were pregnant, you could get the baby health and all those kinds of things so we could have good healthy babies and all those things. My point is,
you agree with Eric.
Until we move, until we put our butts where our voices are and walk the walk.
Basically.
Well, we learned that, but we're not doing it because nobody else came. I mean, nobody else did anything. And I saw that happening. And you can go with all these little logical things, this, that, and the other. We still have a community that's tired, illiterate, and poor, and they just create this atmosphere of not having any self-empowerment that encapsulates in these conditions, in my judgment.
Well,
Robert,
3 minutes left.
He disagreed with what Eric and I also saying about a comprehensive takes policy, takes people, takes effort, working together, right? And the other point that I want to point out is that you look at any community on this planet, white, black, brown, otherwise, right? It is predictable behavior when people in a condition where they feel impoverished, they don't have assets. It is predictable that they will begin to turn on each other, feed on each other. It is predictable that they will seek to engage in criminal behavior and in drugs to feel better. Yeah. Barbara, you work with people, you work with women and people like this all the time. That is predictable human behavior. The number one thing the human body does, if it's under stress, if it's under attack, is it looks to protect itself and feel better now, immediately. Yeah. Let's get through today. Let's get through this moment. That's what your body does. That's predictable. So if you change the policy to change the environment, you're going to get different behaviors. You can't just turn around and blame the victim. That this person is actually reacting in a chaotic situation. They're acting really predictable human behavior.
You know what? And we got 2 minutes left, and I don't even want to go here, but I am. And that is still, if we can change all the laws, we can do until we change mindsets. You know, how do we still, I think we still wind up in the same place. So in these last 2 minutes, what I'd like each of you to do is to tell me during this holiday season, what do you wish for our society this season? We got a minute left. Will, start with you.
That we become honest. We stop this talk about let's have a conversation. Forget the conversation. You have to actually start doing something to make this change because the knowledge is there. And stop blaming these victims for their predictable behavior and get in there and actually engage and do your part of what you can do to make a difference.
Bill?
I'm going to start being a little bit too much selfish, and I'm going to go out and find a child that's about 8 or 9 or 10 years old, and I'm going to mentor them. I'm going to come down. I'm going to visit them once a week or twice a week, take them places, and do something for them. And make their life a little happier.
Okay, and Eric?
Barbara, I recently had I lost a very good friend to a massive heart attack and other individuals with health problems. And I've made it up in my mind, and I've told my students, spend time with those people that you love, that care about you. Find your passion, find your purpose, and live the best life that you can.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much.
Merry Christmas.
We appreciate it. Merry Christmas to each of you. Absolutely. During this season of giving and saying thanks, Lisa Godley, Victor Bowen, and I are so very grateful for your support of Another View. It's been very gratifying meeting many of you in public and hearing how much you enjoy hanging out with us every Friday. And for those of you who are able to support Another View financially, we truly thank you. Your financial support means we can keep bringing you meaningful discussions like the one we just had with our roundtable. Your support means we can go into 2016 assured that we will still be on the air. It's never too late to join the WHRV family. Call 757-889-9476. I understand we're about $600 shy of our goal of $2,000 this month. So please give us a call, 889-9476. And we thank you so much for that support. Next week, we'll talk with Beth Thomas Cohen, author of Drop the Act, It's Exhausting. You will shake your head in agreement and laugh out loud at her observations on life. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Victor Bowen is our audio engineer, and Jessica Jane answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. You still have time to call in your support, 757-889-9476. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.
Thank you, Barbara. Tune in again next week on Friday at noon for the next edition of